Well, good morning, everyone. So, what I want to talk about this morning is what I call the death of franchises. Morning.
Good morning.
And by franchise, you may be thinking, oh, McDonald's, Starbucks, a franchise, but kind of mean it in a more general sense. Kind of almost anything, whether it be a brand, institution, kind of concept or idea that that people rally around, and typically is kind of managed by someone or some group. So people talk about the Marvel and the Star Wars franchises. I'd consider some churches like a franchise, political party, and maybe a ideology. But so that's what I mean by franchise, and I feel like we're in a over the last several years, and I feel like it's been heating up. There's just a lot of big franchises that I think are dying. Now, whether they'll completely die or not, or whether it's just they're going to die back, I guess will remain to be seen. But there's definitely, a bunch of different things that I've just been watching as a pattern where they're just kind of falling apart. And so that's what I want to talk about. I suspect, no promises, but I suspect this may be a little bit of a series, because there's a few different sort of areas of this that I want to unpack in a little more detail. So I think what I'll do with this video is just give you a sort of overview of what I mean in broad brushstrokes, and then I think I may tackle a few different areas where I think this is happening in a little more detail and unpack them. But I guess to start with is, how do these franchises, come to exist in the first place? Which really sort of comes down to how does something become popular? With a whopping 18 subscribers to my channel at this point, obviously I'm clearly an expert in this, so I'm just gonna unload my incredible wisdom here. But seriously, I'm not a franchise, possibly never will be, but again, I've been involved in a bunch, I've been followed a bunch, and so I do, kind of understand it from that end. So I think I can understand how something happens, whether I can make it happen myself or not. So a little bit of a caveat there. But in effect, at the simplest level, whatever it is becomes, very popular, becomes, something that lots of people want to, jump on board of. And that's going to be, why does something become popular? Again, simplest terms, because people like it, people want it, and so because it's doing something for people, such that they want to jump on board. And if it's a product, it's because people like the product. Morning. Either the product, it serves them well. It tastes good, or it makes them feel good about themselves. It enables them to do something or experience something. It expands their capabilities. What have you. And I think sometimes it is it is something that inspires. Maybe churches and things like that. It's gives people a sense of hope, a sense of purpose. Sometimes it's thinking of still the churches, but also political parties. It gives people a sense of feeling heard, feeling understood, being a part of something. So these are all things, and these are all kind of meeting sort of deep needs of people. To feel understood, special, important, part of something. These are kind of fundamental deep needs. And so I think these, for something to become what I'd call a franchise, it needs to hit that. It needs to hit those, those deep personal needs in some form or other. Or it's just really, maybe something that tastes really good, so it makes people feel good in a kind of purely sort of physical sense. But again, it's sometimes it's something becomes popular for a reason like that, and then it becomes a thing. So some franchises are sort of they have enough of something that they get a bunch of people on board, and then there's the a bit of the fear of missing out, so lots of other people jump on board. Though I think those are the most fragile, because if they can't maintain whatever it was that drew people in the first place, it dies off real quick, and that's where you have the what we I guess nowadays call the one-hit wonder. When I was a kid, we'd call it a flash in the pan. Which, just as an aside, I used to think that was like a cooking metaphor, that you're frying something in a pan and so a little bit of the oil catches fire and flashes. I think now, and feel free to research this and hit me up in the comments, but I think it's actually dates further back. Well, it dates back to flintlock weapons, and so there was a little hammer that would come down and hit what they call a pan, and there was gunpowder there that then led down to the chamber. And so the idea is the flint would come down, spark, ignite the gunpowder in the pan, that would then burn down into the chamber and go bang and launch a bullet. So if for whatever reason the burning gunpowder didn't make it all the way down into the barrel, into the chamber, then all you'd get is a flash in the pan. You wouldn't get an actual gunshot. So there you go, a little bit of trivia. So anyway, so that's how, in I believe in sort of real simple generic terms, how something becomes a franchise, and how how it maintains itself. So how do they die? That is the next question. And I believe, actually no, one other sort of form of franchise, or one other common characteristic, I think, is there's often not always, but there's sometimes a person or a key defining idea that people relate to and connect with, and so that person, or maybe a small group of people, become sort of like a defining anchor point that people are drawn to, and people rally around. Or it's just that one person carries the vision, the creativity, the understanding for whatever it is. So let me get back to, so how do things like this die? What goes wrong? And I think there's a few different mechanisms that I've seen that can cause this. I think at the most fundamental level, I would say what happens is the franchise, whatever it is, stops serving the people. It stops being, it stops doing whatever it was doing that drew people to it, that served that deep need that the people had. And now, pardon me while I take a quick drink. Sorry about that. Yeah, this is a fairly tough hike, and it's it's not even 6:30, and it's already in the 90s. It's Arizona, so if you don't stick to a hydration schedule on this hike, you kind of get messed up pretty quick. So where was I? So I think that is, that's kind of one of the key things is the franchise stops serving its its population, stops serving its followers, its customers, and so after a while, people, it's no longer meeting those deep needs, and so people start falling away, and some people will hold on longer than others. A lot of people have a sense of loyalty, and so even when it's sort of like, this is not the same as it was, but I have all these good memories. It was, it's done so much for me. Maybe this is just a bump in the road, and so people hang on. And sometimes it is just a bump in the road. That franchise will kind of pull itself back together again and move forward. But sometimes, perhaps more often than not, it's not just a bump in the road. It's a real sort of sea change, and it's just that's what appears to be maybe a bump in the road is really the beginning of the end. And so so eventually people's loyalty kind of will wear out, and people will leave, and you'll often see, you'll sometimes see, maybe there's some defining moment, there's a mass exodus, or it's just a slowly growing tide of people leaving that sort of starts slowly builds as you're hitting sort of the loyalty threshold of more and more people see the writing on the wall, and so a lot of people start leaving. So and so let's scratch just a little bit deeper from there. Why does the franchise stop serving the very people that made it what it is? It's kind of its very reason for existence, if you will. I mean, as a franchise, something is only big because of the people that are following it. And if people stop following it, it's no longer big. So, and again, I think there's a couple of different things that I think dynamics that I've witnessed. I think one of the ones we've seen a bit, I've seen a bit, or seen a lot recently, is the franchise becomes big enough that it no longer sees itself in terms of the people it's serving, and it becomes a kind of an institution in its own right, or in its own mind anyway. And so when that happens, when something becomes big enough, what can happen is it stops serving the people, and instead the aim, the objective, if you will, becomes just preserving its own existence. And so, and there's some degree of serving the people that is a necessity, and maybe for a while the people are still served because, well, that's the best way to keep your franchise alive. But I think what happens is there's that underlying shift of loyalty, of objective is no longer the primary objective. Is serving our people, and the bigness, the popularity is a byproduct of that. Instead, the objective becomes preserving the institution, preserving the franchise, and serving the people when it is, where it is still done, is really just a means to an end rather than the actual objective. And so I think what happens is people start to get a sense of that. People aren't stupid, not totally stupid, and so people start to feel that things are not the same, that they are not they're not the focus of whatever this thing is anymore, that the focus is taken off them and the focus has become the organization, the institution itself, and preserving that. And so I think that's one of the that's kind of one of the defining hallmarks of a sort of a dying franchise, is that I keep thinking of the phrase "too big to fail." Maybe not quite applicable, but there is a sense of that. It's like, well, we have to keep, so many people look to this franchise, so we have to do whatever we can to keep it alive. But that's the thing, they've lost it at that point. If you're trying to keep it alive, then rather than continuing to serve the people and the vision, if you will, then you're that's right, you're already in your death throes. So and so let's scratch another layer down, is why does that happen? And here we're coming to some of more of the the root causes. I think one of those things is when something becomes big, when something becomes popular, it will attract people. People want to be part of a thing that is successful, part of a thing that's big, and sadly, that can often be, people they don't really care what the thing is. They're just interested in being, part of something that is a success, that is doing well. And so you'll end up with, people who are kind of part of the movement, even helping run it, but who don't really share the vision. They don't really understand what it's about, and their main interest is, in being a part of the thing, and so they're wanting to keep this thing going. So that's where, as you get more and more of those people involved, that's where that focus can start to shift. It's not even a conscious thing. It's just more and more people who are kind of represented by or a part of or who help operate your franchise, they're doing it because, and they're doing it to be a part of it. So their goal is to keep it going, and so the focus just naturally shifts. And so that's where people talk about the downside of success of a thing. It was really good till it became really big, and then it fell apart. And that's often one of the mechanisms. I just apologise, I'm puffing and panting because I'm going up a hill. I'll try and hold it together as best I can. So, a second mechanism, and sometimes that's triggered by that first one, is that the person with the vision moves on. So you have something was spearheaded by an individual, or maybe a couple of individuals. I think like Apple, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. So you have some key figures, or a key figure that really understands, that has an idea that they are committed to, has a concept that they are setting as a sort of external reference point by which they guide themselves, and so they are, that is kind of very charismatic. That's also very effective, when it comes to, sort of guiding a company or movement, is having someone who's holding a really well-defined idea that people can rally around, and that can keep whatever it is on track. And so sometimes that person, they've done what they set out to do, and they feel they've set up a thing. It's time for them to move on. Sometimes it's just they've lived their life, and it's time for them to they feel it's time for them to make way for the next generation, to pass the torch, as it were. Hand it off to someone else to maintain it. It's time for them to decide to retire, and again, nothing wrong with that. Sometimes, sadly, that person or people, the fame gets to them, the success gets to them, and either they enjoy the fruits of their labor a little too much, or they start believing in themselves a little too much. They sort of believe their own press, as it were, start thinking it's all about them rather than about the vision that they carry, and so they get off track that way. They start they start serving themselves, serving their own brand, because they want to keep that alive. They don't want to lose the things that they're enjoying, the success that they're experiencing. They want to maintain that. And so instead of doing the thing, carrying the vision, again, that's where the focus goes off whatever it was that made it great, and it goes on to just maintaining the brand, maintaining the image, maintaining the franchise. And so then you've stepped into the beginning of the end. So so I think that's probably enough as an intro. I think you probably understand, hopefully you understand what it is I'm talking about, what I'm meaning, and I think in the next 2 or 3 videos, hopefully, let's unpack some specific examples, specific areas where I think this has happened, and look at them in more detail, give you some case studies. Anyway, time for me to get my breath back. Thanks for listening. As always, if you think it's worth it, like, share and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.